Part 6. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 51. Did you hear about the rocks pirates? On the calm sea, a huge sailing ship moved forward. The flag fluttering above indicates the identity of the ship. Roger, pirates. As soon as you enter the sea, you will become famous, and although the number of people is small at first, everyone is very strong. After such a long time, the pirate ship, which was originally only 2 people, finally welcomed a 3rd member. Spark Jabba. Join the Roger Pirates as a navigator. At this time, Spark looked at the newspaper in his hand, which recorded the simple information of the meeting between the Locks Pirates, the Arthur Pirates, and the Navy. Arthur's Pirates. We also had a relationship with them in the first place, and everyone was very strong. Riley took over the conversation, and there was some emotion in his tone. Is it better than Captain Roger? Spark asked, confused. Hee, almost. At the beginning, I just had a discussion so far, and I didn't really do it. Riley shook his head, and he couldn't say which was stronger or weaker. It's a pity that there is only one general idea in the newspaper, and there is no specific content or result, but the sea has been much calmer recently. There have been frequent reports of the Locks pirates fighting the Navy, but it has been a long time since we heard anything like this. This kind of thing can be guessed. Riley leaned on the side of the boat with his head in his hands and said slowly. It's rare for the Rocks pirates and the Navy headquarters to be so calm, they must have been hit hard. Hearing Riley's words, Spark nodded, and there was only one explanation for the matter so far. The Rocks pirates. Roger, who was standing on the deck, stared ahead, muttering to himself. Captain Roger, what do you think of the Rocks pirates? Spark came up to Roger and asked softly. The strong men of the Locks pirates gathered, but unfortunately they met Locks, an ambitious captain. Isn't it bad to be ambitious? Spark didn't understand what Roger meant. The world government has the resources of the whole world, and no pirate group can compete with it, whether it is human or material. If you want to stand at the top of the world, you must overthrow the rule of the world government, and it is not something that a few people can do. Roger shook his head, he saw this very clearly. But even the Navy headquarters can't help the Rocks pirates. Spark is not wrong about this, and it is the reason why many people think that the Rocks pirates are very powerful. You also said that the Navy headquarters can't help the Rocks pirates. Roger shook his head, said no more, and looked at the sea in front of him, his eyes burning. Roger has no idea of conquering the world, what he wants to conquer is the Great Passage. And Carp, after learning the news of the Warring States cultivation, immediately set off to go to the front again. The existence of such a threat as the Rocks pirates must be eradicated as soon as possible, no matter what means are used. After a brief period of silence, the Rocks pirates are once again active on the sea. Plundering wealth, engaging the Navy, as always, nothing has changed. It's just that the sea, which had been calm for a while, is once again in flames. If you want to completely destroy the Rocks pirates, it can't be done overnight. On another stretch of sea, Arthur had just finished a 10-round resupply, and what he wanted still didn't show up. It's been 30 times, when can you break out of character once? Arthur shook his head helplessly and closed the interface. Captain, Rita wants to go swimming, can we go together? Rita, dressed in a bathing suit, walks out of the room and extends an invitation to Arthur. Okay, no problem. How could Arthur refuse such a thing? Looked at Mei Yi sitting on the sofa. Mei Yi, let's go together. But Mei didn't prepare a swimsuit or anything like that. Mei Yi looked embarrassed. It's simple, just leave it to me. Arthur opens the shop again and finds the swimsuit, only to find it. There is not enough money. During this time, he spent all the little money he had left. What's wrong, Captain? Seeing Arthur's somewhat embarrassed look, May asked softly. Well, I'm afraid we won't be able to swim today. And, the leisurely time is coming to an end. I really can't help but spend no matter how much money I have, and I have to get some money as soon as possible. Arthur reluctantly tells Rita and May about their lack of money. Captain, if you need money, Rita knows there's a good place to be. As soon as he heard this, Arthur instantly came to his senses and hurriedly asked, but all he responded to was a mysterious smile. Until nightfall, following Rita's instructions, Arthur and his party came to a small island. Captain, this small island is holding a very large auction, and everyone on it is either rich or expensive. Well, Arthur didn't expect Rita to be the hitter. How about it, Captain, do you want to act? Let's go. It's all here, and Arthur naturally won't go home empty-handed. The three of them entered the island and went directly to the auction hall that was being held. Robbery! A loud shout stunned everyone who was at the auction, and then burst into laughter. Immediately a guard rushed over. For all this, Arthur can only show a small hand. In one night, the entire island was ransacked, and even Arthur was shocked by the wealth obtained. A full 50 billion. It came like the wind and left like the wind, leaving only the people on the island touching their empty trouser pockets, wanting to cry without tears. After that, swimming is not a problem. Captain, did you see it? I didn't expect it to be so beautiful in the sea. Mei Yi said as she looked at the little stars in her eyes. Swimming in the sea, they deliberately found a place with more beautiful scenery, and Arthur was also the first time to enter the sea, and he was indeed shocked by the scenery inside. It's beautiful, it's just that the sea kings aren't very friendly. Arthur nodded in agreement. Captain, let's buy a submarine, and when it's okay, we can go out into the sea and have a look. Mei Yi suddenly proposed. Well, that's a good idea, just buy a submarine. Arthur thought for a moment and clapped his hands. Forget it, since you want to buy it, then you can do it in one step, sea, land, and air in one. Arthur had seen similar transportation in the store before, but it was more expensive and not necessary, so he didn't care. I didn't expect to take it down so soon. Open the shop and find the battleship he had accidentally seen before, with 3 abilities of sea, land, and air. A HMS Hyperion. The price is 45 billion. Why is the protagonist also a pirate? Because in addition to the Navy are pirates, of course, there are bounty hunters and the like. However, the mainstream is still the Navy and pirates. For the Navy, those who robbed the heavenly gold and kidnapped the celestial dragons are, of course, pirates. As for why the protagonist doesn't refute it or something, because it doesn't make any sense at all. Identity doesn't mean anything, that's what it is. I've been asking for Hugh Blyan, and I didn't want to let him out so soon, so I could only make a small change. After all, on the sea, ships are the mainstream. And the original ship was Hyperion, so it wouldn't have done so many things, mistakes. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 52. 45 billion. With the wealth that Arthur has now, it is just enough. Click to buy, and it will be automatically deposited in the warehouse. Rita, Mei Yi, let's go, get a new battleship. Arthur said as he made the first to the deck, followed by Rita and May. Bought a new battleship, Captain, you really can't save any money. You don't have to think about it to know that this battleship is definitely not something that can be bought for 1 or 200 million. Ha ha ha, if you have money, you have to spend it, and I'll find a way when I don't have money, and this is what Mei Yi asked, but I don't care about it. Arthur threw a ball straight out. What, Captain, people just said to buy a submarine, but you directly changed to a new warship, and it has all 3 modes of land, sea, and air. For Arthur's irresponsible words, May rolled her eyes and shook back. Rita shook her head helplessly. Since we have bought a new battleship, let's take a look at whether it is good or not. Yes, for sure, you have to trust the vision of Captain Ben. Arthur said and waved his hand, and a huge battleship appeared out of thin air next to him. The whole body is mainly white, and the size is more than twice the size of the White Dragon. Captain, is it necessary to buy such a big one? Rita leapt onto the Hublien deck. The wide deck resembles a small football field. Isn't it good to be bigger? Arthur said and waved his hand. Let's go and have a look in the cabin. The cabin is like a villa, and the whole thing is perfectly combined, even the color is very particular, and it looks very comfortable. Yes, yes, this money is really not spent in vain. Arthur said and looked around, and he was very satisfied with everything, and finally came to the heart of the battleship. Inside the bridge, directly in front of you is a huge screen, and below it is a console with many buttons. Captain, please verify your identity. A cute voice came out of the speaker. Is authentication here? There was a recognizer in the middle of the operation, on which Arthur placed his right hand. Authentication succeeded, Hyperion initiated. As soon as the words fell, the surrounding indicator lights lit up one by one, and the big screen in front of him flashed with a glimmer of light, and a small figure suddenly jumped out. First time we met, Captain, my name is A.I. Brian, and any request from A.I.-chan can be satisfied. Wearing a dress, her small face is very cute. A.I.-chan, we're going to go to the sea and enjoy the scenery. No problem, dive mode activated. From the outside, you can see that the Hugh Brian sides gradually raise the decks, enclosing the entire upper part of it. From a distance, Hyperion looked like an oval ball at this moment. The dive begins, please stand firm. You can feel the Hugh Brian gradually descending, and soon, the whole hull is submerged in the sea, and there is not a trace of it visible from the outside. The air pressure is normal. The oxygen conversion system is working properly. The stealth system is activated. Panoramic holographic simulation on. As A.I.-chan's words fell, the ground and the surrounding walls faded away, revealing a view of the sea. In the end, Hyperion seemed to disappear before his eyes, and the whole person was in the middle of the sea. How's that going, Captain? A.I.-chan is amazing. Seeing Arthur's somewhat surprised look, A.I.'s tone was full of pride. Well, it's a nice feature, it's like you're actually in the middle of the ocean. With Arthur's current perception, even if Hyperion disappeared, he could sense the presence of objects around him. Captain, this ship is so powerful that it can do it so far. May looked around in amazement and slowly walked to the edge of the wall. Ahead, there happened to be a school of fish swimming slowly, and May couldn't help but raise her hand, but it was blocked by the wall in front of her. Actually, there is much more that can be done. A.I. said, in the cabin, the sea water appeared, and beautiful swimming fish appeared in it. Looking at a big fish in front of her, Rita's hand brushed it gently, but it passed through without hindrance. It's a holographic projection that can only deceive vision. A.I. explained a little. Do you have any other interesting features? There are really a lot of surprises brought by A.I., which makes Arthur look forward to it. A.I.-chan also has a lot of interesting features, I can't say enough, I need the captain to understand it slowly. Okay. It's great so far, A.I.-chan, keep exploring the depths of the sea, and it would be great if you could find the treasure. Now that Arthur has little money left, he still needs to hurry up and replenish a little technology. Understood, Captain. Hugh Brian parades through the sea, admiring all kinds of curiosities and discovering something of value. At this time, on the sea, a guy named Mondep was furious. The auction that Arthur had robbed before was held by him, and as the Prince of Mauritius, it had always been a smooth ride. But he didn't expect that a pirate would have the audacity to hit him on the head. Overnight, not only the items of the auction, but also the valuable items from the guests who came from all over were looted. This is not only a monetary loss, but also a reputational loss. It is conceivable that after this incident, his auction business will plummet. How could he not be angry? The whole person who was angry was almost going to explode. His Royal Highness Prince Mandup, we have found out the identities of those who robbed the auction house. In a palatial palace, a subordinate hurried over and knelt in front of a middle-aged man. Say, whoever dares to be an enemy of my Mandup, he will definitely make him pay the price of blood. Mandup roared, the expression on his face a little hideous. After this incident, he was ridiculed for a long time. The humiliation suffered, only blood can wash it away. It's a pirate named Arthur, and that's what we've put together. Even when his subordinates trembled and handed over the information in their hands, they were scattered to the ground by Mandap's slap. Since I know the identity of the person who came, I won't arrest him immediately. But, the strength of this pirate group. The subordinate was just about to explain to Mandap the feat that Arthur and his party had done, but they were interrupted again when they opened their mouths. Strength, humph, can it be stronger than the strength of my guard? Just a pirate, bring him to me at once. At this moment, Mandap didn't listen to anything, and was already thinking about how to punish Arthur after he caught him. Yes, my subordinates will do it immediately. Seeing that Mandap was getting more and more irritable, the subordinates kneeling on the ground suddenly didn't dare to say a word, and nodded again and again and retreated to make arrangements. Humph, just a pirate. Mandip walked around the room with an angry look on his face. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 53. The scenery below is so beautiful, even if you stay for a while, you won't get bored at all. When Hyperion rose from the sea, May was still a little reluctant. The glowing corals, the beautiful schools of fish, and even the sea kings in the depths of the sea look much more cute. Huh. Arthur shook his head amusedly. That's because it's natural to feel very surprised when you go to the sea once in a while, and if you stay in the sea for a while, you won't be so excited, so it's better to keep the freshness all the time. In 2 days, I went around a big circle in the sea and returned to my original position, and the scene in the sea was really eye-opening. It's a pity, there is no legendary mermaid. I believe the captain will like it very much. Rita looked at Arthur with a look of pity. Are you tempting? It must be a temptation. Arthur was sure that the black-bellied Rita had something to say. No, Captain, you're mistaken. Doesn't the captain like to meet the legendary mermaid? Naturally, Rita would not admit her thoughts, but instead changed the subject and looked at Arthur with a puzzled gaze. To say mermaids? Yes, there are on this sea, but it's not here, so I'll take you to see it when I have the chance. I heard that all mermaids are very beautiful. Will they be like heaven for the captain? Something seems to be something very wrong with Rita today. Arthur got up from the couch, came to Rita, reached out and touched his forehead. I don't seem to have a fever either, Rita, what's wrong with you today? Ahem. Just when Arthur looked puzzled, Mei next to him coughed lightly. Captain, you can't have forgotten what you said a day ago, have you? Mei cautiously prompted. Did I say anything a day ago? Arthur tried to remember, but he couldn't think of it. Seeing this scene, Mei shook her head and came to Arthur and whispered. A day ago, the captain had said something like that, if only I could see a beautiful mermaid. After such an obvious hint from Mei, Arthur finally remembered. At first, he just had a feeling, and he said it unintentionally, but he forgot about it afterwards, but he didn't expect that Rita still remembered it, so he had a little temper. Arthur's gaze couldn't help but look at Rita, who had been standing next to him, and gently hugged her. "Rita, are you jealous too? No matter how beautiful a mermaid is, it's just a fish after all, how can it be compared to you?" Arthur comforted softly, and there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Rita has always been a polite and perfect woman who never worries anyone and will wholeheartedly satisfy any requests made. At times, Arthur also relied heavily on Rita. But he forgets that Rita exists because of him, and everything is centered around the captain. Maybe the longing in his eyes was captured by Rita, so he had some small emotions. Actually, Rita would love to see what the mermaid looks like, to make the captain so obsessed. "In that case, Captain, let's go find the merfolk." Mei Yi also suddenly became interested. "Okay, then we'll go looking for merfolk on our next stop," Arthur exclaimed, and the matter was settled for the time being. According to the database, the mermaid has a sweet appearance, an elegant voice, and a gentle singing. AI also ran out to join in the fun, and the image of a holographic mermaid appeared in front of everyone. Big eyes, a small nose and mouth, cute looks, long hair covering the chest, a fishtail under the waist gently swinging, and the body hovers freely in the living room. Is this what a mermaid looks like? May and Rita looked at the merfolk swimming in front of them, glanced at each other, and reached some kind of agreement in an instant. That's what the mermaid looks like, but it's a pity. Arthur shook his head as he looked at the gently swaying fishtail. The hologram dispersed, and AI also said that there was no exact information about the mermaid in the database, and if you see a real mermaid, you may be able to supplement the content of the database. Hugh Bryan drove unhurriedly on the sea, occasionally encountering some caravans and pirates. Arthur did not pay attention. And there are no pirates who don't open their eyes to come up and ask for trouble. After all, Fang Yuan is in the scanning range of Hyperion, and once a ship approaches a certain distance, AI will issue a warning. If you want to force your way over, you only need to take a look at the dense barrels, and you will be so frightened that you immediately turn around. Arthur and his party came to the deck, slowly moving their bodies, and watched the ships passing around them. Recently, the chances of encountering a ship have been increasing. Is there any small island or something around here? In general, it is difficult to see other ships in the open sea. It is only around the island that there are more ships, and if it is a big export trade, it is like crucian carp crossing the river. Captain, there is a country nearby, so there will be more ships encountered. For the surrounding situation, Rita has done her homework before, and with the help of AI, she is naturally very clear. A country? Then let's go up and have a look. It's not good to be adrift at sea for too long. Although with the stability of Hiberia, some waves could not affect the people in the boat at all, but psychologically it was still the best feeling to be grounded. AI-chan received it, let's go right away. Arthur's voice came from the communicator on his wrist. This is AI handed over to them, one for each person, who can not only contact each other, but also give instructions to AI remotely. It's very convenient. With the huge hull of the Hyperion and the exquisite craftsmanship, the places where the line passed naturally attracted many eyes. At that moment, a galleon marked the royal insignia headed for Hyperion. Staying far away, with no intention of attacking, Arthur was a little puzzled. As they got closer, one of the guards on the deck stepped forward. Arthur Alexander. As he spoke, he looked at the image in his hand, and his mind was already determined. That's right, I am. What's the matter? Hearing Arthur's answer, the guards responded loudly. Our Royal Highness the Prince, please. There's something going on in the last 2 days, so I've updated 2 chapters. Let's make it up all at once today. €. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 54. Osborne has been very sad lately, and every time he reports to His Highness Mandup, he trembles. For a day, 2 days, and still haven't found any news about the Arthur pirates. Osborne felt that if this continued, Mandap's patience would run out, and it was not impossible to get angry with him in the end. Nearest the king, nearest the gallows. Usually stays by Prince Mandap's side, and the scenery is infinite, but when something happens, he is the first to go under the knife. Where can I find a pirate in this vast sea? Osborne walked anxiously around the room, thinking about what to do. He had already spread the news of the Arthur pirates as soon as possible, hoping that someone could provide some useful information. Now it seems that the effect is not very effective. Seeing that it was about to be time for the report, Osborne became more and more anxious. Perhaps it was really the road of the sky, and a soldier ran in through the door. "Captain Osborne, there's a discovery." The soldier's tone was also full of joy, and he followed Osborne's spicy food, and if he fell, his men would not have a good time. "Is there any news about the Arthur pirates? Where are they?" Hearing the good news, Osborne instantly came to his senses. "Captain, there is indeed news. The Arthur pirates." The soldier swallowed as he spoke, and he choked on the exhaustion of his journey. "The brothers in charge of the patrol said that the person who saw your portrait of us on a large ship should be the Arthur pirates that His Royal Highness the Prince is looking for." After a 2-second break, under Osborne's anxious gaze, the soldier uttered all he knew. "What are you talking about? Patrol? Is it in the harbor?" "The only patrols are in the city and around the harbor." If it was in the city, he would have known the news a long time ago, so there was only one answer. "Yes, it's in the harbor, they're coming this way." There was something strange in the soldier's tone. The auction of their Royal Highness the Prince was ransacked, and if they didn't run far away, they would even send it to the door automatically. Great, now it's finally time to explain. Osborne didn't care why the pirate had fallen into the trap, he just knew that his life had been saved. Come with me to meet our savior." The sorrow was swept away, and Osborne walked out with a sinister smile on his face. No matter how much trouble is made outside, when it comes to their territory, the dragon must be coiled, and the tiger must lie down for him. Heading to the port, I saw the striking ship from afar. As a pirate, he actually sat on such a beautiful ship. Seeing Hyperion, Osborne's face was envious and jealous, and then his eyes rolled, and he instantly had a plan. "If you donate this ship to His Royal Highness the Prince, you may even get a compliment. But when you think that the Arthur pirates once dealt with the navy and are now safe and sound, they must be very strong, and everything must be done carefully." So Osborne stopped Arthur in their ship with the royal emblem, and spoke in a very polite tone. "It's Arthur Alexander." Osborne stepped forward and shouted. Lang Lang's voice was transmitted, making the passing ships can't help but look sideways. "I am." Arthur was a little puzzled in his heart. Why did someone come to pick him up when he just came here? "Great, His Royal Highness the Prince of my family has an invitation." Hearing this answer, Arthur was even more puzzled. He came to this world, but he did not know any princes or other characters. "Your prince invited me," Arthur repeated again uncertainly. "Yes, His Highness Mandap, heard of your arrival and asked me to be here to greet you." Osborne's posture is very low now, but he is sneering in his heart. As long as this group of people is deceived into their base camp, it is not up to them to decide whether to kill or scrape when the time comes. "Captain, when did you meet His Royal Highness the Prince?" Not only me, but even Rita was confused. Rita can be said to have been by Arthur's side all the time, and has never heard of any princes or anything like that. "I guess you know more about my affairs than I do." Arthur shook his head. "So Captain, do we need to take a look?" Let's go, there's nothing to do anyway." Having received Arthur's answer, Osborne immediately opened the way ahead. "Tut tut, I was invited by His Royal Highness the Prince just after I arrived. What kind of big man is here?" "Big shot, if it's really a big shot, His Royal Highness the Prince will personally invite him, how can he only send one guard? Speaking of which, I've heard some gossip. I sent the two ships one after the other to leave, and the people around me were talking. Docking Hyperion to the shore, the group finally set foot on the land. Captain, I don't think they're very friendly. Two groups of soldiers surrounded Arthur and the three, armed with weapons, silent, as if escorting prisoners. Let's wait and see what tricks they're up to. This gesture is not at all like welcoming guests, and Arthur is absolutely confident that he can solve any problem anyway. He walked forward in silence, and what he saw on the road made Arthur's brow furrow slightly. In the endless flow of people, the awe is clearly divided into two groups. Some were brightly dressed and had rich faces, while others were ragged and had yellow complexions, as if they hadn't eaten for a long time. If he only saw one or two cases, Arthur didn't care, but he accounted for the vast majority along the way. The ragged men saw the guards walking by, and one by one they were afraid to avoid them, and the panic in their eyes could be felt. These people are likely to be abused for a long time. However, at this moment, on the way forward, a little girl walked forward slowly. And on the side of the road, a woman rushed to the little girl with a frightened face. In the face of this scene, the soldiers' pace of progress did not stop, but the spears in the hands of the most front group of soldiers stabbed forward. If this continues, it is expected that in a few seconds, the little girl and the woman will be pierced by the spear. Seeing such a scene, the pedestrians on the side of the road also formed two groups. Standing there in bright clothes, with an expression of watching a play, it seemed that he was still expecting something in his eyes. And those people in rags couldn't help but turn their heads one by one, with sympathy and unbearability in their eyes, and a feeling of sadness emanating from them. And at this moment, Mei moved. Kaido, they're interns with the Rocks Pirates, and I know that, of course. But there are only a few people in the entire Rocks Pirates, so they can only take out what they know and talk about it, and they will not be described in detail. Moreover, the Rocks Pirates are all strong people, and although they are interns, their strength is naturally not low. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 55. Seeing a mother and daughter standing in the way in front of him, Osborne, who was walking in the forefront, didn't say anything, as if they didn't exist. Hold your head high and stride forward. Brush, brush, brush. The spears of the guards on both sides stabbed forward, their heads shining brightly in the sunlight. The pace was firm, and there was no pity in his eyes, as if it was not the first time he had done such a thing. The women finally held their children before the army arrived, but that was all there was to it, and it was impossible to leave. The ending was already predictable, and the woman only hugged her daughter tightly and buried her head in her arms, giving her the last shred of warmth in the world. The spear is getting closer. At this moment, the expressions on everyone's faces express the truest thoughts in their hearts. There are those who are excited, there are those who are looking forward to it, there are those who are pitiful, there are those who are sympathetic, there are those who are numb, and so on. Brush. A sword swept by, and the spear that was about to touch the woman broke at the waist. Don't you see anyone in front of you? Mei appeared in front of the woman who fell to her knees, looking at Osborne in front of her with cold eyes. From the moment she entered the country, Mei felt a little weird. The people here are so distinct, as if people from two worlds have forcibly merged together. You mean people? Osborne was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then couldn't help but laugh. Even the faces of the rich people around him couldn't help but show a playful look, and the corresponding poor people looked even more depressed. Ha ha ha, outsiders, in this world. As long as you have money, you can have everything you want, and without money, then his status is no different from that of a slave, and he is not worthy of being called a human being. Osborne said as he walked in front of the mother and daughter, bent over, a smile on his face, and asked, Who made you live on this land? He is the king of Mauritius. The woman glanced at Osborne with some trepidation and whispered in a trembling voice. Who gave you food so that you could survive? The smile on Osborne's face was not only a little thicker. It's the king of Mauritius. The woman replied again. Now that we are working for the great king, and you, who have received all the favor of the king, stand in our way and delay the king's business, what do you think we should do? Osborne's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was oppression in his tone. I. The woman's lips trembled and tears flowed down her face, but she could not say the words that followed. Your daughter is so cute. Osborne raised his hand and grabbed the child in the woman's arms. But the woman clung to one and turned to dodge, which made Osborne's eyes cold slightly. The woman, apparently aware that her actions would annoy Osborne, immediately fell to her knees. I beg you to let my daughter go, and to stand in the way of the adults, and I am willing to die to atone for her sins. Loud cries rang out through the streets. This kind of cry of sadness and tears of the sea really can't impress those who have a look of watching the play in their eyes. You said you were willing to die to atone for your sins, right? As Osborne said this, his eyes glanced at Mei. Yes, yes, as long as I let my daughter go, I will. The woman's voice was very urgent, and repeated begging for death was now her only wish. As you see, it's not that I want to kill her, it's that she's bent on dying, and as His Majesty's loyal guard, we can only try to meet any demands of the people. Osborne straightened up, and his righteous and awe-inspiring look made the anger in Mei's eyes in front of him even stronger. His eyes swept over the people around him one by one, and panic and fear appeared on their faces. Captain. Mei's eyes looked at Arthur, waiting for his decision. Didn't you say that His Royal Highness the Prince is waiting for us? Is it really good to delay here all the time? The mother and daughter didn't mean it, so let them go. Arthur came to Osborne and unleashed a hint of overlord-colored power. In such a situation, if it were according to the past, Osborne would definitely kill the two people who blocked the way, just enough to deter these pirates. But seeing Arthur's gaze, a feeling of fear enveloped him, and his brain stopped thinking and couldn't refute what he said. The feeling was fleeting, but it made Osborne cold. It took a long time for his mind to recover a little, and he took a few steps back, the expression on his face gloomy and uncertain. Humph, you two are lucky today, get out of here. Hearing Osborne's words, the woman kneeling on the ground nodded her head in thanks, and left with the child in her arms. The eyes of the surrounding pedestrians couldn't help but fall on Arthur, and they all guessed the identity of the person in front of them. One sentence can make Osborne change his mind, and it must be a big deal. A few distinguished guests, please, don't let His Royal Highness the Prince wait. His Royal Highness the Prince said that he would definitely entertain you well. The fear in Osborne's heart gradually turned to anger, and the expression on his face lost the hypocrisy it had at the beginning. Yes, then lead the way, I can't wait to meet His Royal Highness. Rita, Mei, the two of you go around and the palace will meet in a moment. Arthur said, winking at Rita and Mei. Okay, Captain. The two men nodded and were about to turn to leave, but the guards around them flashed their weapons. What is this for? A playful smile appeared on Arthur's lips. It's really impatient to expose your intentions so quickly. I was a little confused before, but now I know for sure. These people weren't very friendly to him. Although Arthur still didn't quite understand where he had offended the prince. Since we are guests, it is better to be honest when we come to the host's place, and obediently follow us to see the prince, and do not have any unnecessary actions. At this time, Osborne was too lazy to pretend. In this place of 3 acres of land, Osborne's words were the truth. But alas, Rita and Mei didn't pay any attention to Osborne's words. Their captain had said that they would follow his orders, no matter what difficulties lay ahead. The guards in front of him, Mei can easily solve it alone. Brush brush brush. Several cold flashes flashed, and the guards fell to the ground one after another. "Captain, you need to be careful." Rita waved at Arthur and split up with the soldier. "Go in both directions. You. Osborne didn't expect that here, these pirates would be so bold and dare to do something to him. "Don't leave you, let's go, take me to the prince you are talking about." A sneer curled into Arthur's lips as he looked at the palace in front of him. With Hyperion, the white dragon will naturally be recycled in the warehouse, and it is estimated that it will not appear in the future. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 56. In a palatial palace, Mandap sat on his high seat and waited patiently. Not long ago, a guard came to report that the pirates who ransacked his auction were about to be brought to him. This made Mandap's mood that had been suppressed for several days be released in an instant. "What a daring pirate, even daring to be presumptuous on my territory, let you feel how terrible the price of angering this prince is today. The entire palace has been ambushed by him in the shadows, and there are even 4 of his personal guards. The personal guards here are not comparable to Osborne and the like, each of them is a devil fruit ability, and their strength is strong." Bang! A figure smashed through the door and flew straight in, smashing straight into Mandap, who was sitting on a high seat. At this moment, a figure flashed beside him, and with a stretch of his right hand, he caught the flying figure. The burly body pinched Osborne like a chicken. "Osborne, what's going on?" Seeing Osborne like a ball, Mandap's eyes widened and he asked sharply. "Your Royal Highness." Outside the door. Osborne was obviously beaten up, and his speech was a little unpleasant. "I regret it in my heart. As soon as you enter here, you shouldn't have let the surrounding guards attack Arthur, and he was beaten in vain without saying a word and did not subdue him." When Mandap heard this, a figure slowly walked in from outside the broken gate. "You just want to see my Royal Highness." Looking at the figure sitting directly in front of him, Arthur raised his eyebrows slightly, and his gaze swept around. Although these people are very hidden, they are like open fire in the darkness under his perception of what he sees and hears. Seeing Arthur standing in front of him so aggressively, scanning his surroundings unscrupulously, he didn't look at him at all. When did Mandap, as a prince, be treated like this? Instantly angry, he slapped the armrest and shouted, "Humph! Just a pirate, don't you kneel down when you see Prince Ben." As soon as the words fell, the guards on both sides rushed out in an instant, surrounding Arthur. And next to Mandap, 5 people stood side by side, with a strong physique, and at first glance they were good at strength. "Looks like you're pretty well prepared." Looking at the guards who surrounded him, there were 30 or 40 of them, all holding large knives, and their faces were fierce. "Take him down for me." As soon as Mendelpue gave the order, the guards immediately moved, slashing at Arthur with their broadswords raised. In the face of such an opponent, Arthur really couldn't raise the slightest interest in making a move, and with a wave of his right hand, 4 titans emerged. Enveloped Arthur in a square and blasted out with a huge fist. Bang! The powerful force was not at all something that these ordinary soldiers could resist, and they flew upside down in an instant, knocking down a large area. Bang bang bang! The Titan mecha took heavy steps, and wherever it passed, the autumn wind swept away the leaves, and in the blink of an eye, all those guards were knocked to the ground. "What is this?" Mandap's eyes widened as he looked at the Titans. There are still too few people in the world of pirates who have the power of science and technology, and even as a prince, they have never heard of anything like it. "You guys come on." Looking at the Titan mechas standing side by side in front of Arthur, the corners of Mandap's eyes jumped slightly. Why does this comparison feel that the 5 people standing in front of him are so low? Yes. Mammoth form. Orangutan form. Bison form. The 5 of them immediately unleashed the power of their devil fruits. All of them are animal-based, and they are also mammoths, orangutans, bison, dung shells, and giant ants that represent the strength type. If the power of these devil fruits is well developed, even if it is a dominant side, it is not impossible, but bang! The Titan itself possesses great power, and is naturally fearless in the face of the bombardment of power. One-on-one, the remaining one charged straight at Arthur. It has some of the characteristics of a mammoth, and its fists are covered in slender hairs. Arthur raised his right hand to get a taste of the power. Bang! Alas! Feeling the impact of this force, Arthur sighed slightly. Such a fruit is really terrible in your hands. The strength is naturally much stronger than that of ordinary people, but it is far from exerting the power that the fruit has. I'm afraid that this time in this country has already been hollowed out, and there is only an empty shelf. The power of the Titan mecha was not much different from it, but with the aid of fire power, it quickly gained the upper hand. Arthur eliminated the opponent in front of him with 3 strikes and 5 divisions, and slowly walked towards Mandap, who was sitting in the high position. You don't come here. I really didn't expect that. My personal guard looked fierce and abnormal on weekdays, but at the moment he was weak like a little girl, and he was easily leveled. Seeing Arthur approaching, Mondip wanted to retreat, but there was no way to retreat. You can't do anything to me, I am the prince of the country of Mauritius, if you dare to touch my Harry. To this day, Mandap is still threatening, and Arthur is too lazy to listen to him, so he grabs it and throws it out. After waiting patiently for a while, Rita and May walked in from outside. Captain, we're back. Rita glanced at the people lying on the ground and walked towards Arthur. How's it going? Letting Rita and May go around before, naturally it was not just a simple turnaround, but to find out the news. Entering this country is like entering a colony, and Arthur cares a lot about the difference. Captain, everything is as expected. Rita's face narrowed, and she slowly told the news he had spent. As one might have guessed, the country had long been tyrannical, the aristocracy was richer, and the commoners were poorer, living in misery for decades. Rita said and shook her head. It is precisely because of decades of oppression that those people have become somewhat numb. Captain, let's help them, it's really pitiful. Mei Yi's hands shook Arthur slightly, with a look of unbearability. Looking at the past along the way, what I saw and heard was like purgatory on earth. Civilians get together. The place where they live is like a garbage dump, where snakes, rats, insects and ants are often infested. And these things are rare rations for those civilians. Captain, if you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, you really couldn't have imagined what it would have been. Rita's heart was filled with sighs. The world is so big that all they see is a small land. I am afraid that there will be many more people who are numb to live in an environment that never sees the light of day. Don't worry, Mei Yi, she was touched by us, so naturally she has to take care of it. Arthur patted Mei Yi's hand and comforted softly, and stood up from his seat. Now that the country is corrupt, it is necessary to eradicate the corrupt part. Let's go to the palace and wipe out those nobles. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, return captain. Chapter 57. With the combined power of Arthur, Rita, May, and numerous titans, it is only a matter of time before a country is swept away. Arthur went to the palace first in order to get to the palace once and for all. The guards fought all the way in and kidnapped the king, who was still watching the beautiful women dance. Stephen Mauritius, this is the king's full name. The king was kidnapped, and everything else was easy. The Son of Heaven ordered the princes to invite the nobles of the whole country to the palace for a grand event. The weak king, after Arthur had only made a slight threat, immediately gave an honest order. The next thing is to wait patiently. Arthur sat on the king's seat, Rita and Maye left and right, savoring the food in front of them. At the same time, 2 Titan mechs were sent to guard the door. As long as someone enters, knock out without saying a word. After half a day's effort, the entire hall was already full of richly dressed nobles. Who are you to dare to kidnap us, and do you know my identity? A nobleman who had just been tied up shouted angrily, but when he saw the situation in the hall clearly, he suddenly became dumbfounded. These are really familiar old friends. Yesterday they were still drinking together, why? Today? Suddenly, one of the figures came into view, and his mouth opened wide in shock, and he didn't close it for a long time. The king. The esteemed king was treated the same as everyone else, and he almost didn't recognize it in the crowd. Arthur sat on his high seat and slowly shook the wine glass in front of him, drank it all before speaking. Have you arrived? If one is missing, I'll kill one of you at random, so I'll look at the answer. As soon as Arthur said this, the nobles looked around them. The nobles of a country are already very familiar with each other, and the number of people is not very large, so you can see it at a glance. Seeing that no one answered, Arthur nodded, and it seemed that he had already arrived. In that case, it's time to get down to business. Arthur rose from his seat, and the nearest king suddenly spoke. As long as it can be put to me. The country's wealth is at your disposal. After a little while, the king had figured it out. This person who suddenly appeared was bold and would not let them go, and now he can only use money to tempt him, hoping to save his life. It's a tempting condition. A hint of joy appeared on the king's face, and Arthur continued. However, I can already dispose of the wealth of this country at my disposal, so what difference does it make if I let you go or not? Hearing this, the king's face turned pale. Obediently waiting here for us to come back. Arthur walked to the door with Rita and May as he spoke, and stopped when he was about to go out. By the way, these big guys are very unkind, and I don't care if I move casually and get killed. After saying that, he left the room and went to the back treasury. Now that you're in the palace, it's a shame not to raid it. Seeing this demon leave, everyone was a little eager to try, but as soon as there was a slight move, the eyes of the Titan mecha immediately stared at it. The muzzle of the black hole makes people shudder. Until Arthur and his party returned with a full load, these nobles still did not have the courage to use their flesh and blood to carry the muzzles of these black holes. Well, yes, it's pretty good. In that case, let's go. The Titan mecha walked out of the palace with 2 in one hand, naturally attracting the attention of many people along the way. And those noble subordinates saw that their masters were arrested, and they came to the rescue, but that's it. Not even a punch from the Titans could stop it. Arthur ignored the commotion around him, and a mighty group of people came to the central square. It's Lord Baski. Oh my God, Lord Mork is there, too. It's the kings. There was a cry of exclamation from the dense crowd around the central square. The eyes of the civilians were filled with wonder and disbelief. This kind of high-ranking figure is standing there like a tortured prisoner at this moment. Captain, what are you going to do? If these nobles were to be killed, there was no need to bring them here. Nature is to save the world, both physically and mentally. Arthur's gaze swept over the crowd around him. Even though the nobles stood motionless, looking embarrassed, the eyes of the commoners were still fearful. This fear is etched into their souls. So what Arthur had to do was to let them destroy the fear in their hearts. I'm sure you can see who is standing in front of you at this moment. Arthur's voice was not loud, but it spread, and the noise in the square gradually subsided. Do you have any resentment in your heart against these nobles who are high up and enslave you? Arthur paused for a moment after speaking. The eyes of the commoners around the square stared at the nobles standing there one by one, but they didn't dare to say a word. On the contrary, those nobles still look arrogant, if it weren't for the Titan mecha around, I'm afraid they would be even more presumptuous. Don't you have any complaints against these nobles? Seeing such a scene, Mei was a little incomprehensible. Why do the nobles who have done the wrong thing still have a lofty posture? Why do these commoners still dare to be angry with the nobles when they are in charge? Mei's words still echoed around, but no one spoke. Ha ha ha, it's ridiculous. One of the nobles looked up to the sky and laughed, his eyes sweeping around. Is it that funny? Arthur looked at the nobleman in front of him, who was already in his 40s. Ridiculous, ridiculous. These untouchables only have the fate to be at our disposal. Have you ever seen whose dog will bite its owner? I advise you to let us go honestly, otherwise the consequences are not something you can bear. To this day, that nobleman is still threatening Arthur. He didn't believe anyone would dare to hurt him in the slightest. Really? Let's wait and see. The easiest way to defeat fear is to defeat it. Arthur gagged the shouting nobleman and pushed him forward, glancing around and pointing at a tall, thin man. You, come here. Me. The tall and thin man looked left and right, pointed to himself, and waited for Arthur to nod accurately, and then walked over slowly. Put it on your eyes. Arthur made a gesture of his right hand, and an eye patch appeared in his palm. Here, take it again. Arthur handed over a long sword again. Looking at the commoner standing in front of him, blindfolded, and with a sword in both hands, the nobleman seemed to think of something and struggled all over. But under the shackles of the Titan mecha, such struggles are useless. Now you're slowly moving forward. Hearing a whisper in his ear, the man with the sword slowly stepped forward. Everyone around watched with bated breath as they watched this scene. Only the nobleman in front of the man was still struggling. Poof! The sword was sharp, piercing into the skin without any hindrance. The nobleman's eyes widened instantly. Just then, Arthur removed the man's blindfold. His vision gradually became clear, and looking at the nobleman who was close at hand, the man retreated in fright. Growing up, I have never been so close to the nobility. Then he found a long sword stuck in the nobleman's belly. The nobles are human beings just like you. Just now you just took a step forward, and that nobleman would die by your sword. A demonic whisper rang in the man's ears. The sword. It's mine. The man stared blankly at his hands, and an indescribable pleasure spread throughout his body. That's right, it's you, hold that sword now, and draw it. At this moment, the man had no more thoughts, and subconsciously obeyed Arthur's orders. Take a step forward, hold the sword in your hand, and draw it with a gentle force. The nobleman's face suddenly changed suddenly, and blood flowed out of the wound that was not deep. Now the life of this nobleman is at your fingertips. The sound in his ears continued, and the man looked at his hands holding swords, and then at the blood that flowed from the nobleman's wounds in front of him. There was a hint of something strange in his blank eyes. Poof! With both hands stretched, the long sword plunged into the nobleman's abdomen again, this time with more force, and blood gushed outward. Compared with the nobleman who was a little hideous because of the pain, standing in front of him, the look on the man's face became brighter. Draw your sword and push it again. Poof! Pull out, push, pull out, push, pull out, a bunch of. The movements became faster and faster, the expression on his face gradually became excited, and the corners of his mouth wore a sickly smile. And the nobleman's abdomen was stabbed like a hornet's nest, and there was no sound at this moment. Such a picture frightened the other nobles behind him. Especially when the man looked at them with some crazy eyes, his whole body couldn't help but tremble. Nobles are the same as you, the same people, the same pain, the same death. At this moment, when Arthur said the sentence again, the eyes of the people around him became brighter and brighter. Take up your weapons and vent all the resentment in your hearts. Oh! As soon as Arthur's voice fell, a roar suddenly erupted in the crowd. One took a step, followed by a second, a third, a fourth. More and more people converged on the central square, and gradually approached the nobles. His hands were scratching, his teeth were biting, and he was doing everything he could, like a wild beast. And at this moment, Arthur, Rita, and Maye have already left far away. Hearing the screams coming from behind, there was no mercy in my heart. Captain, if we just walk away like this, these crazy people don't know what will happen. It's been suppressed for so long, and once it erupts, it's not surprising to do anything. That's not our business anymore. Arthur shook his head. Whether these people are crazy and self-destructive, or whether they finally come to their senses and establish a new order, it will definitely take a long transition time. Arthur didn't plan to stay here for long. Came to the port and set off again on the Hyperion. This trip, his harvest has been very rich. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 58. How much of a country's wealth is wasted by them when it comes to only 30 billion? On the deck of Hyperion, looking at the numbers displayed above the shop in front of him, Arthur shook his head speechlessly. Although 30 billion is a lot, it can only maintain daily expenses, and if there is something more beautiful in the photo, I am afraid it will be gone in an instant. Captain, this is today's morning report. Rita walked over with a newspaper, and Arthur took it and saw the contents with a slight light in his eyes. The Rocks pirate ship has been getting more and more active lately, and the Roger pirates have fought against the Navy many times. The contents of the newspaper were only briefly described, but Arthur could already guess the current trend. I'm afraid the final battle will be before long. At present, the actions of the Rocks pirates are becoming more and more reckless, and the Roger pirates are gradually revealing their hideousness, and the pressure on the Navy headquarters may be very great. At the moment, I must be racking my brains to figure out how to solve it. Just as Arthur had guessed, the Rocks pirates were in a major meeting at this time. If you want to dominate the world, you have to take the world government into your own hands. In a large, bright room, the first thing Locke said when he gathered everyone together was this. In this time, they had amassed enough wealth and gathered enough companions that Locke didn't want to wait any longer. How to do it specifically? Will you just hit it? Edward's brow furrowed slightly. He wasn't very keen on dominating the world. They joined the Rocks pirates because they were famous and strong enough, and they could make themselves even stronger by joining them. Edward was looking for a sense of home, but alas, he felt only deep malice on this ship. Everyone is selfish, and in order to get more wealth, cannibalism has also happened, and it is not the place he wants to stay. With the strength we have now, even if we fight directly, it's not impossible. Shiki smiled darkly, his eyes shining brightly. It's finally time to wait for this day, and he can't wait. The world government is ruled by the Draconians, and we will directly capture them, and the whole world will be ours at that time. Lox had already planned all of this, and now it was just a matter of informing him. The meeting quickly dispersed, and everyone left with their own little calculations in mind. At the stern, Kaido's gaze was fixed on the front, and what was different from his appearance was the delicacy of his mind. As an intern, Kaido's strength can only be regarded as midstream in the Rocks pirates, so he is a little worried. After checking the information, Kaido only gradually became stronger after leaving the Rocks pirates, so I will correct the previous statement that it was strong. I 1/4 per thousand. And at this time, Charlotte Lingling walked over and looked at this spiritual guy Kaido and said lightly, "If there is a big fight, follow me." Charlotte Lingling, as a giant clan, showed great strength at the age of 5, and now her strength is even more terrifying. This day means a lot to the Rocks pirates. Everyone was thinking about the future path, but the only thing missing was the support for their captain, Lox. And in the headquarters of the Navy, Rocks pirates, Roger pirates, Arthur pirates. The sea is really not calm. Cyborg sat in his chair and muttered to himself. Each of the three pirates is very powerful, and the Rocks pirates are the most threatening, causing incidents everywhere and exhausting their navy. Relatively speaking, the Roger pirates and the Arthur pirates are more stable. Marshal of the air. The door opened, and Carp walked in. How's it going? Who did you go to, and what was the result? The result of the steel bone empty refers to the Union. Unite with other forces to completely eliminate the Rocks pirates. And the Roger pirates and the Arthur pirates are his two preferred targets. I've spoken to Roger and he's agreed to join forces with us. To be honest, the speed at which Roger agreed was a bit of a surprise to Carp. With just a little mention, Roger agreed. And what about the Arthur pirates? The strength of the Arthur pirates is undoubted, and if they join, they will surely win. I didn't look for it. Carp is still a little resistant to the Arthur pirates, and he doesn't think Arthur will help them in the navy. Forget it, with Roger's pirates, the winning rate is a little bigger. As for Carp's thoughts, Steelbone Sara is naturally very clear. Well, how is he doing with Sengoku? After resting for so long, I am not even allowed to visit. There was some urgency in Carp's tone. During this time, let alone visiting, he didn't even know where the warring states were. Don't worry, Sengoku is recovering well, and you will be able to meet soon. Speaking of this, there was some admiration in Steel's empty tone. Really? That's great. Carp showed a hint of joy on his face, and he could finally fight side by side with Sengoku again. Hey! Captain Roger, are we really going to help the Navy? Spark finally said what he had been holding in his heart for a long time. I never thought about teaming up with the Navy to deal with pirates. Locks is too dangerous. That's all Roger answered. Spark wanted to ask something more, but was stopped by Riley next to him. The ship fell silent again. A few days later, within the Hyperion. No matter how bad luck it is, it's time to draw it this time. Arthur wanted to have his character explode, but it didn't always go his way. Tap on 10 resupplies, and 10 rays of light appear in front of you. The light was restrained, and the items inside appeared one by one, and the corners of Arthur's calm mouth slowly curled. Finally, I have arrived. On the shelves at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, friends who like it support a subscription, and friends who like to raise books support a first subscription. As long as the subscription is not particularly overwhelming, it will continue to be written until the end. The last time the data was retrieved. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 59. Being in the vast universe, the surrounding galaxies are disillusioned, and there is a vast atmosphere. In the depths of the universe, in the unreachable place, a brilliant light flashed and appeared in front of Arthur. The light is restrained, and the items in it are revealed. Character card, Kiana Kislana. All of the rest are character shards A38. After all, I was not wrongly paid. With a faint smile on his face, Arthur ignored the fact that the lottery interface was reset to 0 again, and immediately opened the Valkyrie warehouse. After Rita and May, a brand new character awaits his unlocking. Kiana Kislana. As for the number of character fragments on the side, the previous and this time add up to 49. 49 thirtieths, upgradable. Without any hesitation, Arthur immediately clicked on the upgrade. A faint light flashed, and the B-rank Valkyrie was promoted to A rank Valkyrie. And the number of character fragments has changed accordingly. 19 thirtieths. If you're lucky, you'll be able to get the 11 character shards you need in a single draw. Promoted to a rank Valkyrie, Kiana unlocked a total of 2 pieces of armor. Saint Prayer and Valkyrie Ranger. After reviewing the character information, Arthur clicked the fight button. The white light condensed in front of him, gradually outlining the outline of a human figure. A figure emerged from the light. Dressed in a black and white tight Valkyrie uniform, her long white hair tied into 2 braids perpendicular to her back, her closed eyes slowly opened. The blue eyes are as pure as emerald. The Valkyrie Kiana Kislana came to report. Looking at Arthur in front of her, Kiana clasped her hands into fists and said loudly. But such a serious image lasted only 2 seconds, and the pursed lips immediately hooked up a smile, and the small nose sniffed lightly, looking in the direction of the kitchen, and the eyes glowed slightly. "It's so fragrant, Captain, is this specially for me?" Seeing Mei and Rita walking in front of her with delicate dishes, Kiana's eyes moved with it, and her saliva was about to flow out. "Yes, Kiana. Wow, Captain, you're so nice, I love you to death." Kiana opened her arms and hugged Arthur. But before Arthur could raise his hands, Kiana ran to the table. Looking at the dishes served one by one, he couldn't take his eyes off it, leaving only Arthur, who was still standing in place, holding his hands lightly raised, standing there awkwardly. "Captain, are you playing a sculpture?" Seeing Arthur's posture, Mei not only smiled, but also got into her outstretched arms and gently patted Arthur's back to express comfort. "Fortunately, you have you in me. You can make up for my wounded heart. Captain, the dishes are ready, and you can take a seat." Just then, Rita's voice came. "Yes, Captain, come here, Miss Ben can't wait to destroy the food." Kiana is holding a knife in one hand and a fork in the other, and she looks menacing, and people who don't know think she is going to fight with someone. "Let's go, Mei." The 4 of them were seated, and Arthur glanced at the dishes on the table. It's still full of color and flavor. It's not like a dish, it's a delicate work of art. "All right, let's go." As soon as Arthur's words fell, Kiana immediately aimed at the food that she had been staring at for a long time. It's delicious, am I in heaven right now?" Kiana tilted her head and chewed slowly, with an intoxicated expression. Ahh. After a gust of wind swept away the clouds, the food on the plate was wiped out. "Well, Miss Ben can't eat any more." Kiana touched her bulging belly with a satisfied expression. "You can really eat, Kiana, be careful that you get fat, you won't be pretty by then." For Kiana's appetite, Arthur was an eye-opener today. "How can it be, Captain, Miss Ben won't get fat, she has a good training every day." For this kind of thing, Kiana has never been worried. After all, there's nothing more desirable than enjoying good food. Mei, tell Kiana some of the situation in this world, and give him a brief science popularization. "Okay, Captain." Half an hour later, a shout from Kiana came from the quiet living room. "What? Are we actually badass?" Kiana bounced off the couch and turned to look at Arthur. "Captain, why are we going to be big villains like pirates? We are righteous partners." From Mei's mouth, it is known that their current identity is pirates. That is, the people in this world who often do bad things. Kiana stopped doing it in an instant. There is a price to pay to be a partner in justice. Seeing Kiana's over-reflected look, Arthur smiled. "The cost?" Kiana asked cautiously. First of all, you must abide by the rules, go out early and return late, report the situation to your superiors every day, and daily patrols and the like are commonplace." Arthur slowly said what he was thinking, but the more he listened to Kiana's face, the more ugly it became, and he hurriedly stopped it. "Stop, stop. What's the matter? Didn't you say that you want to be a partner in justice? It's not enough to do that. If we want to, we can go to the Navy, and I'm sure they won't refuse." Arthur has absolute confidence in this. Who would turn down some powerful people to join? But Kiana's head shook like a rattle and smiled. I suddenly realized that the righteous partner is not so easy to be. Let's be pirates. It's a joke, just following the rules makes Kiana uncomfortable. Not to mention the boring patrol tasks and daily reports. If daily life is so monotonous and boring, it is better to kill her. Are you sure you're going to be a pirate? Arthur asked again with a smile on his face. Yes. Kiana nodded earnestly, and then asked. Is this Rock's Pirates really that strong? For the strong, Kiana is also full of strong interest. The hegemon of the sea is not just talking, it's just a pity. Arthur said, shaking his head. What a pity. Halfway through the words, this made Kiana's heart itch. It's a pity that their hearts are not aligned, which is doomed to the future. Lox is indeed a heroic figure, powerful and ambitious, and it is normal for him to become a hegemon. But the companions he had gathered were united by interests. Such a bond cannot be destined to last long. Oh. Kiana nodded as if she didn't understand. The next step was to ask Kiana to choose a house to live in until nightfall. While Arthur was lying on the bed, still wondering why it was so quiet today, a figure approached. Captain, Rita said to have the captain check it out on the first day. In the dim light, Kiana lowered her head and slowly approached with her hands rubbing the corners of her clothes. Total ship collapse, reject rocks at the start. Author, Return Captain. Chapter 60. The pre-dawn darkness gradually dissipated, and a hint of whiteness appeared on the distant horizon. Cut through the darkness and bring light to the earth. On the calm sea, a white battleship slowly moved forward. It's really exciting. It's a live broadcast or something, AI-chan likes to watch it the most. In the control room, in the faint screen, AI looked at the small screen in front of her like a thief. From time to time, there is a slurping sound coming out of the mouth. At that moment, a face slowly moved closer to the screen. AI-chan, what are you looking at? A faint voice sounded, and AI's whole body was smart, hiding the small screen in front of her behind her back, and immediately turned around. It was found to be a kind-faced Rita. It's also something Rita does every day, coming to the control room every morning and checking on the situation around her. So as long as Rita is there, it's very reassuring, and everything will be taken care of. It turned out to be Rita, and it scared me. AI patted her chest, looking like she was overly frightened and slowly subsided. You were looking at something and you heard something terrible. Hearing Rita's words, AI instantly became vigilant and shook her head again and again. No, how could AI-chan do such a thing? You must have heard it wrong. Seeing AI's flustered expression, the corners of Rita's mouth hooked up with a dangerous smile. AI-chan, if you take advantage of Hyperion's authority to peek at us without permission, you understand the consequences. Rita said as she flicked her right hand over the hibernate button in front of her. As long as you click this button, AI will fall into a deep sleep. Huh. AI looked at Rita with a pleading look. AI-chan is also out of curiosity, the first time you peeked. Please don't tell the captain if it's okay, for AI-chan's sake. AI's big eyes blink and blink, desperately selling cuteness. It's okay not to tell the captain. Rita said as she moved closer again. Copy the content into a copy of my communicator. This. AI's eyes widened, she didn't expect Rita to put forward such a condition, and then nodded again and again. In this way, they are grasshoppers on a thread. Allies shouldn't betray allies, right? A shady deal was made on such conditions. Rita, you're still so early. When May came out of the room, she had already seen Rita working in the kitchen. It's a bit troublesome to make shrimp porridge today, so I'll do it early. Rita said, her hands moving non-stop, and she carried out all kinds of work in an orderly manner. Shrimp porridge, Rita, you really have a heart. Why do you want to make shrimp porridge sprouts? It is naturally very clear, and it is very beneficial to the current Kiana. This is what Rita should do. If you have the opportunity, you have to improve the recipe. After all, the captain will probably be very busy in the future, and once the physical strength and nutrition can't keep up, it will be very nerve-wracking. Now that the shrimp in your hand have been fully processed, the next step is to prepare the auxiliary materials. There are more than 10 kinds of auxiliary ingredients needed for a bowl of shrimp porridge, which will make any chef look at it and be dumbfounded. The next procedure was more cumbersome, so Mei didn't bother anymore, glanced at Arthur's room, narrowed her eyes slightly, and walked up slowly. Rita had sensed Mei's movements and shook her head slightly. Women, they are really curious about this kind of thing. The room was unlocked, and it opened with a light push. Seeing the two who were still asleep, Mei quietly walked over. Do you want to be together, too? Was looking at her sleeping face when she suddenly heard Arthur's voice, which startled Mei. Captain, you're so bad, you don't open your eyes when you wake up. Mei said as she stretched out her little fist and slapped Arthur lightly. Warm as jade, how can I be willing to wake up? Arthur's right hand gently stroked Kiana's little head, a look of aftertaste. Humph, Captain, you're still like this. Mei didn't know what to say, and stood up half bent. Now that you're awake, get up quickly, Rita has prepared breakfast, and the light taste can dilute the fishy smell in your mouth. After Mei finished speaking, she turned to leave, and gently closed the door by the way. Captain. A soft murmur slowly spat out of Kiana's mouth. Did you wake you up, Kiana? It's still early, so I can continue to rest for a while. Kiana opened her eyes with a kitten-like laziness on her face. No, I heard that breakfast is ready. Good guys, Kiana hasn't forgotten to eat until now. But my whole body was limp, and I didn't have any strength, so the captain picked me up in his arms. Kiana said as she slowly spread her arms. Good, good. Arthur bought a dress from the store. After more than half an hour of washing, Arthur walked down the stairs with a lazy Kiana in his arms. I can smell it, it smells so good. A faint fragrance wafted from the table, and Kiana didn't know where she got the strength from, so she sat there in 2 steps and 3 steps. What's wrong, Kiana, is she hurt? Seeing Kiana's wrinkled face, Mei asked with concern. It's a wound, it's okay. Kiana glared at Arthur viciously as she spoke, but was immediately attracted by the food in front of her. Who made you run so fast, and no one robbed you? Arthur sat down on the stool slowly, looking helpless. Humph, you still say? Kiana's small mouth pursed slightly, and her little face was full of the big words Miss Ben is very unhappy. Arthur didn't do much of this. Sure enough, after a while, Kiana began to slowly taste the shrimp porridge. From time to time, there was still admiration in his mouth. Rita, your craft is amazing. If I don't have you in the future, I'm afraid I won't be able to live. After drinking it in one gulp, Kiana came to a bowl again. Captain, Rita has something for you. When she finished eating, Rita came up to Arthur, and a light curtain shone out from the communicator on her wrist. The inside gradually reveals itself. It's, how, Rita you? At first, it was unclear, but slowly, the above display made Kiana's face crimson, and she jumped up from the sofa in an instant. Turn off the communicator. You have to ask AI about specific things. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on her, Rita was unhurried. Inside the bridge. What are you going to do? Don't come here. Help, someone is going to persecute a kind and lovely beautiful girl. AHH. Seeing Kiana with a fierce face slowly approaching, AI trembled in fright on the screen.